Election results for us. We're very, very proud of it, all largely as a consequence of the hard work and determination of our leader, who I'm delighted to welcome to the stage, ladies and gentlemen, Richard Tice.
Good morning, everybody. Very good to see you this Monday morning. Thanks for being here. Now, something extraordinary happened last week. The Chancellor, he said, we have a plan, and the plan is working. The Prime Minister repeats it endlessly. Clearly, no one's told them that the economy, our country, is in recession. Clearly, no one's told them that that recession per person is the longest since records began almost 70 years ago. People are getting poorer. That recession, almost 2 years per person. If that's their plan, well, it's not the plan of the British people to get poorer. Let's be honest, it's not surprising they're sinking in the polls if they think a recession is a good idea. And something significant has changed in recent months. I've noticed people's concerns and anxiety has turned to anger and fury. Because nothing works. Britain is broken. And we all know who broke it. There are so many areas where it's broken, but let me just give you a few examples. I mean, there is absolute fury across the country that the Tories have imposed on us without any democratic consent whatsoever, in complete breach of what they promised in the 2019 manifesto and previous manifestos. They've imposed on us mass immigration that we can see from the data is making us poorer. No question whatsoever. People also, separately, are appalled at what's going on in our streets, in our towns and our cities, week in, week out, with these anti-Semitic, hate-filled, pro-Hamas marches that is leading to genuine fear. The Jewish community in London afraid to go out at the weekend. Many of them thinking about leaving London to go back to Israel. What a shocking indictment of the performance of the boss of the Met Police, of the person in charge of security in London, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, of the Home Secretary and of the Prime Minister, that the Jewish community are terrified. Absolutely appalling. Separately, people are horrified that this gender ideology is infecting our schools, poisoning the minds of our children, parents, grandparents in their millions, shocked by this. And also, people are waking up to the absurd multi-trillion-pound cost of this obsession with net zero. But any of us who want to talk about this, oh no, we're a bigot. Yeah, we're smeared. We must be labelled. We're phobic in some way. No, we're not. We're just talking common sense. The genuine concerns of tens of millions of people up and down the country. And it's only Reform UK that is prepared to have that conversation. I've said it before, but I have to say, I think the Westminster establishment has never been more out of touch with the concerns of tens of millions of hard-working British people up and down the country. That's why we're going up in the polls. Just last week, we were only 5% behind the Tories, who are sinking under sinking Sunak to just 18%. We're going up and they're going down. Now, many people think this is a short-term pressure group for one election. Forget it. You're wrong. This is a serious, medium-term plan. We have to shape and influence and change the course of direction of this country of ours. Because at the moment, it is broken and people are getting poorer. And where does this start? Well, I'll tell you where we're polling even higher, and that, of course, is in the Red Wall. Millions and millions of people, as they hear about us, they say, thank heavens for reform. So let's be clear about our ambition. It's bold, it's ambitious. In the Red Wall, this election, we want to replace the Tories as the main alternative to Starmageddon. That's what it is. It's a nightmare coming to everyone near you in 2024. So we're going to replace the Tories in the Red Wall, which means we need a champion, of course, of the Red Wall, someone who completely understands it, who is trusted by voters to tell it as it is, no nonsense, no waffle, clear, basic common sense. And I'm delighted to announce that I have found that champion of the Red Wall for Reform UK. He's also, coincidentally, going to be Reform UK's first Member of Parliament in the House of Commons. He is, of course, a person of great integrity, no nonsense, and is the Member of Parliament in the county of Nottinghamshire for Ashfield. Please welcome Mr. Lee Anderson.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you very much indeed. Brilliant. Let's go have a quick photo.
Who said that? He's not having an interview, no. He's not having an interview.
Brilliant, well done. Over to you.
Can you see me? Can you all see me here? So, I'm going to keep it brief, guys, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll start by saying I want my country back. Over the last year or so, I've had to do a lot of soul searching on my political journey. And it was laughing. And I don't expect much in politics other than to be able to speak my mind and speak on behalf... Is that you, Harry, laughing? Speak on behalf of my friends, family and my constituents. Now, I might not know a lot of these long words some of the people use in Parliament, but I know a few short ones. But unfortunately, this sometimes leads me to be labelled as controversial in my opinions. But my opinions are not controversial. There are opinions which are shared by millions of people up and down the country. It's not controversial to be concerned about illegal immigration. It's not controversial to be concerned about legal migration. It's not controversial to be, worried, concerned about the Metropolitan Police and a failing London mayor, and the hate marchers, the street crime, and the shoplifters literally getting away with ruining businesses on a daily basis. It's not controversial to fight back in a culture war that is sweeping our nation. I am proud of our great country and the gifts it has given to the world over hundreds of years. Gifts like the Industrial Revolution, railways, culture, sports, medicine, such as vaccines, which have saved hundreds of millions of lives. And we've defeated fascism in 2 world wars. We've always punched above our weight on the international stage. But now, like millions of people in this country, I feel that we are slowly giving our country away. We are giving away our way of life. We are allowing people to erase our history. We are giving up our streets to a minority of people who literally hate our way of life. We are allowing people into our country that will never integrate and adopt our British values. Parliament doesn't seem to understand what many British people want. And quite frankly, some of them need to get out more. I made some remarks a few weeks back about the London mayor, for which I was stripped of the whip from the Conservative Party. And let me be clear right now, on this stage, I will not apologise. It is no secret that I've been talking to my friends in Reform for a while, and Reform UK has offered me the chance to speak out in Parliament on behalf of millions of people up and down the country who feel that they're not being listened to. People will say that I've took a gamble, and I'm prepared to gamble on myself, as I know from my mailbag how many people in this country support Reform UK on what they have to say. And like millions of people up and down the country, all I want is my country back. Now, this may sound offensive to the Liberal elite, but it's not offensive to my friends, my family, my constituents and some of my donors. Constituents like my mum and dad, who told me they could not vote for me unless I joined Reform UK. My parents are both nearly 80, and they get it. and I must not let them down. As I said at the beginning, I want my country back. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well done. Fantastic. Fantastic. So, thank you for that. I'm going to take some questions from members of the media and the press. We'll start with the People's Channel. Chris Hope, GB News.
Chris Hope from GB News. Lee Anderson, on the 2nd of January, you said reform is not the answer. It leaves the door open for Sir Keir Starmer. What has changed in 10 weeks? And how can voters trust you at the election when you so publicly betrayed the Tories?
Well, over the last 10 weeks, we've seen, well, one big thing changed last week, Chopper, and that was Mr Galloway coming into Parliament, and we have to fight back as a country, and the only party that's offering that fight back, what I can see, is Reform UK. You know, this is a big problem, it's a concern, it's worrying my constituents and constituents, people up and down the country, who are worried about people like George Galloway getting into Parliament. We have to fight back, and unfortunately, the Conservative Party and the Labour Party won't fight back. This party will fight back, and that's why I've joined.
And there is another big difference, Chris. On the 3rd of January, I said that we were facing a recession, that you cannot grow the economy with the burdens that I identified then, of the highest taxes, the highest wasteful government spending, nanny state regulations, mass immigration, and net zero. A month later, I was proved right. Sadly, the economy's in recession. As I said, for 2 years per person, we are in recession. That's what's changed. There's a massive, massive wake-up call. I hope that helps. Beth, you next.
Thank you, Mr Anderson. You talked there about a lot of soul searching. You were a Labour backer, then you were a Conservative MP, now you're defecting to Reform. What do you say to people that say the problem isn't all these parties, the problem is you, and this is all about attention seeking, and this has been very disloyal to Rishi Sunak, who made you Deputy Party Chair, and also to other colleagues that have backed you very verbally in recent weeks and are probably very upset and angry with you that you're going to only hurt their chances in a general election. What's your answer to them? Thank you.
Country, constituency, and then party. Next question, please, Richard.
What, sorry.
No, next question. What do you say
to your colleagues
I've given my answer, Beth.
who feel really let down this morning?
I've given my answer. Next question, please.
Millions of people who trusted the Tories to deliver Brexit, to reduce immigration, they're the people who count, the voters, not the representatives in Parliament. That is the difference. We focus on the concerns of the British people.
OK, let me put... What's your message to Mr Sunak?
We're going to move next. We're going down the line.
Alison. He hasn't answered my question.
Well,
Alison.
Hello.
How confident are you that people there will stick by you now you've switched parties? Some are opposed to reform.
I had 4,000 emails last week in my inbox. I've got a sack full of mail as well, not just from my constituency, Alison, from all around the country. And when my friends and my family and my staff are telling me to join the Reform Party, then I have to listen. You know, like I said to Beth earlier, my country comes first, then my constituency, then a political party, and that's answered all your questions, Beth.
Chris Mason, BBC.
Thank you, Chris Mason, BBC News. We've seen in the past, Mr Anderson, defectees from the Conservative Party trigger a by-election. We saw it with Douglas Carswell, we saw it with Mark Reckless joining the predecessor party of UKIP. Why not do the same right now?
Well, you're talking about Mark Reckless. It'd be pretty reckless of me to suggest a by-election when we could have a general election in May. There's your answer.
Why not go for it, though, and prove
because
it costs a fortune.
I think actually millions of people are sick of parliamentarians wasting taxpayers' cash. We've got a general election within weeks or months. Actually, what we've got to focus is getting the message out to the British people about the choices and the option. And that's the joy of democracy. Different parties, different views. That's great.
Harry Cole.
Harry.
Thank you, Mr Anderson. Just a few weeks ago, you described Mr Tice as a pound-shop Nigel Farage, whose reforms answered Diane Abbott. What's made you change your mind? And the question to Mr Tice, do you agree with what Mr Anderson said about the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan? Do you stand by those comments and you're happy to share a platform with him?
Look, absolutely, and I think millions of British people endorse the concerns and sentiments of what Lee was saying, which is that we are sick and tired of our streets being taken over by these pro-Hamas, extremist, anti-Semitic people and Islamist extremists. That's the concerns that people want to hear about. And in terms of pence, pounds, I tell you what, maybe if you look after the pence, the pounds look after themselves.
Yeah. And also on that point, Harry, somebody described you as a pound shop Glen Owen, and I didn't agree with that.
Next.
Thank you. Harry Horton, ITV News. Lee Anderson, you've had 3 political parties now in 6 years. How long are you planning to stick with reform? And why should people trust you, given that clearly your own political beliefs seem to be changing? And Richard, for you, how many of the Tory MPs are you talking to? And realistically, do you think any more will switch to reform before the general election?
Well, first of all, my political beliefs have never changed at all. I believe in I think politics is quite simple. You listen to what people have to say, then you go to that place and carry it out. And it's that simple. And we're not doing that. And I think this party will allow me to speak on behalf of not just my constituents who are furious with what's happening in that place, but millions of people up and down the country. And like I said before, my country has to come first. And I'm scared of what we're doing at the moment in this country. We are giving this country away and it's got to stop.
And to answer your questions, I will be surprised if there are not more other MPs from other parties who don't join reform before the general election. Could be wrong if it's called a week on Friday, but otherwise I'll be surprised.
Labour.
Who's next? Yeah, Gary.
Harry Gibbon, Channel 4 News. Thank you. If I understood your new party leader when he was doing the introduction, he said Britain's broken and the Tories broke it. Do you agree?
I think every party's broke it. It's not just the Tory party, it's the Labour Party, it's Parliament, Gary. It's the whole of Parliament.
What he said, is it?
Oh, you listen to what I have to say. It's the whole of Parliament, the whole system, the whole democratic system in this country is rigged. It doesn't represent, really, what people are saying. I live in the real world. That's a place called Ashfield, Gary. It's a Junction 28, if you ever want to pop in. And when I go into the pubs and shops and walk down the street at the weekend, people are talking like me. They're talking like Lee Anderson. They're not talking like you lot or the MPs in there. They live in the real world and they've got real concerns about the cost of living, about migration, legal migration, illegal migration, stuff like that. They're talking about, you know, the crime on the streets, the shoplifting, the fact that you can't get a police officer turn up to your house if it gets burgled, the fact that people are pulling their own teeth out, you can't get a GP appointment. So I'm here to speak up for them, not for you lot.
Andy.
Thank you very much. Andy Bell, 5 News.
Hi, Andy.
Lee Anderson, haven't you just made it much harder for your Conservative colleagues who are fighting to try and hang on to their seats? Haven't you just helped Keir Starmer win the next election? Do you feel comfortable with that?
Somebody, Andy, has to make a stand. And I said it last week, there's 650 MPs in that building over there, and if not one can speak out for the good of this country, then, quite frankly, what's the point in being there? I have to live with my conscience. My conscience is clear. When I go and see my parents yesterday on Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day, Mother, and they say to me, Lee, you need to join reform. This country needs saving. We're absolutely fed up with what's happening on the streets of London. We're fed up with what's happening up and down the country. We're just fed up. We need change. If my parents are saying that, then I can sleep well at night.
I've got a very simple message. Vote Tory, get Starmer. Vote Reform, get Reform. Who's next?
Thank you very much. George Parker from the Financial Times. Mr. Tice, question to you first of all. You talked about anti-Semitism and the rise in anti-Semitism. Are you equally worried about the rise in anti-Muslim hatred and attacks on the Muslim community? And so, Mr. Anderson, just specifically on the extremism policies of Rishi Sunak. He gave a speech on the steps of Downing Street last week. Michael Gove's got a new announcement on extremism policy this week. Do you think your former party is doing the right things to tackle extremism?
Look, all extremism and all hate is bad, but we are clearly seeing that the real, most frightening impact on our streets and in our towns and cities at the moment is the threats to the Jewish community. I touched on it in my speech. I'll reinforce it. It's utterly appalling. And I called for these marches to be banned on October the 11th because I went on the very first one on October the 9th. I was ranted at, I was abused, I was shouted at. Israel hadn't even responded by then. I knew there was going to be a problem. And I tell you what, if they'd been banned then, we would not as a nation be where we are now, and the Jewish community would not be terrified. And so, you know, I think actually, sadly, I was right then, and I'm still right now. Who's next? Just to the right of you. Sorry, you want to... Yeah, sorry.
Well, I mean, words are all well and good. And I agreed with pretty much everything the PM had to say on the steps of Downing Street a few weeks back, but we don't want words anymore, we want action. And when people up and down the country see these marches, these demonstrations in central London, they get emboldened, and then it starts happening everywhere else, and we're seeing MPs' offices attacked, we're seeing MPs attacked in the street, we're seeing council meetings or political meetings, you know, ambushed, and we're not doing enough. I don't feel safe sometimes on a Wednesday night walking out there. I have to use a different exit route. So, yeah, words are one thing, but we want to see action. And it's funny, this year is 40 years since the miners' strike, something which my dad was a striking miner. And I would go on picket lines with my dad, and the policing then was completely different. And I don't agree with everything the police did at the time, because some of it was quite horrible. But they had a job to do. They had to keep the peace, and they had to make sure that men who wanted to go to work got to work, and they did a job. They made sure that working miners got to work in places like Ashfield, where I represent. So I think the police, I don't blame the officers on the ground, I blame the chiefs, I blame Mayor Khan. And it's all well and good us keep blaming Mayor Khan, but I keep hearing words in Parliament like it's unacceptable for this to happen. I'm sick to death of hearing the word unacceptable. We need action, and the British people deserve action.
And I tell you what, I mean, the fact that on Saturday you had a protester who was holding up a placard stating English law, which is that Hamas are terrorists. They are a proscribed organisation. He was abused, he was assaulted, and yet he was arrested, which basically says, under the current failing leadership of the Met Police are now on the side of the Hamas supporters. Deeply shocking, utterly woeful and unacceptable. Just to your right.
Thanks, Richard. Adam Payne from Politics Home. A question for Lee Anderson. Lee, both Richard and...
The Met Police, of course, have said that wasn't the reason for the arrest, and there was a de-arrest, but we won't go into that just now. Well, we have